Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, and I wanted to make a quick video tonight talking about the situation with the Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff, more specifically the coordinators Eric Bieniemy and Steve Spagnuolo. Sorry I'm not doing a face cam video for this one. My camera and the software was acting up. It happens, so I'm actually hoping to upgrade computers soon. So I can improve the quality and editing for you guys and everything like that. I just don't have the software and the power on my PC to run that kind of stuff right now. But that's besides the point. You guys don't really want to hear about that. You want to hear what I have to say about the Kansas City Chiefs. I felt the need to make this video because Eric Bieniemy is in head coaching discussions once again this cycle. I'm also going to get to Steve Spagnuolo. Even though Steve Spagnuolo technically has not been requested to be interviewed by any team, I felt the need to address him, and you'll find out why later. But starting with Eric Bieniemy, I'm not surprised that he's getting mentioned once again in this year's cycle because, he's someone that I still think has head coach potential, and obviously that's why teams interviewed him in the first place the past few years. He just never could seem to land a job. I know there's a lot of controversy around why Bieniemy hasn't yet got a job. I know some people are very opinionated about it, but I will say this. He does have some off-the-field concerns in his background that I can understand why teams would be scared of. It's not just like one or two little things. Like, it's a couple pretty serious matters that, like, maybe, because I know he had a couple of harassment ordeals at Colorado when he was a player. I believe he had a couple when he was a coach too. There was sexual assault allegations coming down on the Colorado coaching staff when he was on it with Vance Joseph back in the day. So, like, sometimes teams are afraid of, like, what if we get a situation where we hire him and then some, female or something comes out a few weeks after he gets the job and says, hey, Eric Bieniemy assaulted me when I was, X years old. It could create a PR nightmare. Now, I'm not saying Eric Bieniemy is guilty of that. Certainly not. But I could understand why teams would be a little bit nervous of that. And also, I've seen and heard the rumors that Bieniemy is a bad interview. I can't attest to that. I don't know. But I think people do kind of underestimate what the interview process could do for a head coaching candidate. Like, who knows? Maybe Eric Bieniemy is walking into these things totally unprepared. Now, the biggest reason I think he hasn't become a head coach yet is the interview process combined with the fact that his play calling and his offensive philosophy isn't actually all that appealing to teams, and I think we saw a lot of that this year. It was made very clear that Eric Bieniemy is calling the plays, and I know a lot of you, including myself, just weren't very happy about the play calling, and there was a drastic difference in the play calling from drive to drive, game to game. It was evident. I mean, the Chargers game, the last one, for example, that first drive was absolutely beautiful. A couple plays to Mike Burton. Mike Burton also had a touchdown on that drive. I mean, it was magnificent. I loved the play calling. And then after that, it was like diddly squat for 3 quarters. They just weren't scoring at that same rate. They weren't moving the ball as easily as they did early in that game. I also think the league is just a little turned off at the moment by Andy Reid offensive coordinators because we saw Doug Peterson get fired from Philadelphia. I know some people disagree with that firing, and I think Peterson will actually get his chance again. Sometimes you just need time off from the game to adjust and things like that. But then you have Matt Nagy, who really did fail in Chicago, was in over his head. And maybe the league is just kind of wary of Andy Reid assistants since the last couple, have been fired. I think it's a whole combination of things of why Bieniemy hasn't been hired. But now that I'm done with that spiel, I want to talk about the coaching jobs that he's being discussed for and what I think about that. So the Denver Broncos requested to interview him. Now, The Broncos job, obviously, if I'm the Broncos, I'm looking for an offensive mind, because usually how coaching searches go is if the last guy that you fired was a defensive mind, you typically go in the opposite direction, or vice versa. So I'm sure the Broncos want to find someone that's offensive minded. That's the side of the ball that has been a struggle for them the past several years under Vic Fangio, so they want to move away from that. Their defense is already set. So I could understand them wanting to hire a Bieniemy. Now, if I'm Bieniemy, I would hope to get a job outside of the AFC West, because I think if Bieniemy's going to succeed, he needs to get away from Reid. He needs to get out of the AFC West. I don't think the Broncos will be a spot where he could ever win the division. The Broncos are probably the team with the worst quarterback situation in the AFC West. It's just not a great destination if I'm Bieniemy. However, at the same time, if you're Bieniemy, you've seen your options kind of pass you by as the years have gone on, and you don't really have much of a choice at this point if you want to be an NFL head coach. So if the Broncos offer you the job, you pretty much have to take it, because you can't take those opportunities for granted. But I also saw another report that the Vikings, after firing Mike Zimmer, are interested in Eric Bieniemy, and that Eric Bieniemy is actually the odds-on favorite to land the Vikings job. Now, that one I would love much, much more for Bieniemy. I think the Vikings just fit Bieniemy, and Bieniemy fits the Vikings. I think Zimmer was in over his head as well towards the end. The Vikings just need a young person with fresh ideas, and I think that's what Bieniemy is, and that offense actually has a lot to work with. They've got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. That's a nice core for Bieniemy to work with as an offensive coach. And the thing I love about Bieniemy the most is his discipline, the way that he'll get in your face and really take charge. That's something that Reid doesn't really do, that I kind of wish he would do sometimes. Like, Bieniemy is not afraid to show his teeth. And if you guys have ever listened to Eric Bieniemy press conferences or been to a training camp practice, he is a brutal coach, but I like that in a coach. I had coaches like that, and I really enjoyed all of them because they do care about their players. They just really want the best out of them. But I really do think at this point in time, the Vikings would be the best option for Bieniemy. And here's also why, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm kind of really pushing for Bieniemy, because I think this offense got a little bit stale after he returned for yet another season. We saw the Chiefs offense struggle. I mentioned it a minute ago with the play calling and how you could tell there was a drastic difference, and because a lot of it was the coaching staff, Andy Reid, emphasizing this is Eric Bieniemy. I want to let Eric Bieniemy showcase what he's got to really make sure he's a head coach in this offseason cycle. And I think it backfired a little bit. Bieniemy can still learn and grow as an offensive play caller, but I still think he can be a good head coach because he's a good culture guy. He's just really going to have to nail his coordinator hires. And I do think it's time for new blood in the Chiefs' offensive coordinator position. A lot of people have been talking about, what are the Chiefs going to do, assuming Bieniemy finally does go elsewhere this offseason. People have thrown out the idea of Doug Peterson or Matt Nagy coming back, and Doug Peterson is actually the one that I would like to bring back if I had my choice, or if the Chiefs were to bring one back. However, I don't think that's really the route Reid wants to go. It's not really typically what he does, bringing guys back. I think they've been waiting to give Mike Kafka, the quarterback coach, his chance, and I think he's going to get it. And I think, the whole goal is to get fresh new ideas. We've seen Nagy here. We've seen Peterson here. We haven't seen what Kafka can do as an offensive coordinator, what he could bring to the table. And that could add a new element to the Chiefs offense, because I think the Chiefs offense got stale this season. So, yeah, that's kind of my answer as to what's going to happen with Bieniemy and what I think the Chiefs, the direction they would go if Bieniemy is to leave this offseason. I also wanted to talk about Steve Spagnuolo a little bit in this video. Now, I know he hasn't gotten really any head coaching buzz, and no one has officially requested to interview him or anything of that nature. But earlier this season, if you guys remember, Steve Spagnuolo did say that he would like to become a head coach again if the opportunity presents itself. Now, off the bat, I'm going to say I think Spags would not be a good head coach. I think he's someone that's much better suited as a coordinator, that he just really wants to be a head coach, because every coordinator would like to be a head coach, but he's just someone that would be a good coordinator only. Anything more than that, and I think you're asking too much. And personally, if I'm running an NFL team in this day and age, I'm not hiring a defensive head coach. I would go offense almost every single time. We've also seen Spags as a head coach before with the St. Louis Rams, and it did not go well. Although I do think he got a raw deal with the St. Louis Rams. If you guys are even the tiniest bit educated about how the Rams were run back when they were in St. Louis and understand Kroenke's ownership. But that's a whole nother story. I've actually done a video on that before. You can go check it out after this if you're at all interested. But anyway, I just don't think Spags would be a good head coach. But there is a slight possibility that he gets mentioned in some coaching searches. Now, I am in no way pushing Spagnuolo out the door or anything, but let's just say that if he left, I wouldn't be all that upset. Yeah, he's been a good coordinator here. He helped the Chiefs get their first Super Bowl, but I do think he is a little bit stubborn, and sometimes his stubbornness really comes back to bite the Chiefs, and I think sometimes keeps them from reaching their full potential as a group. We saw it this year a lot. Heck, and it's funny because I still get a lot of comments on videos completely unrelated to Steve Spagnuolo or the defense. Spags is terrible. He's going to end up losing us a playoff game. Neiman and Sorensen still on the field. And look, I agree with everyone. I can't push back on that. Some of his decisions are just really mind-boggling, and I've complained about Spags a lot this year on the channel, which is why I wouldn't be all that upset if he left. I think the Chiefs could still upgrade at defensive coordinator. And there's actually a couple names out there that I would really love to see the Chiefs bring in as Spags goes. Before I talk about these names, I want to kind of put out a disclaimer that I just wouldn't bet money that Spags is going anywhere, and the only way that the Chiefs look for a defensive coordinator is if either one, the Chiefs have a complete defensive meltdown in the playoffs, which, hey, I'm not going to rule anything out. But the other scenario in which they could find someone is, of course, if Spagnuolo takes another job. That being said, if Spags leaves and there is a DC opening, I would love for this team to pick up Vic Fangio. And actually, I would kick Spags to the curb right now to make Vic Fangio this team's DC. That is my dream scenario. You guys heard it on the RGR channel on their Q&A Monday night. And go check them out if you're not already subscribed. You know, they're a huge inspiration for what I do, and I can't thank Ryan and Dan enough. I mean, they show me love every time on their show. But anyway, Dan was on there talking about how Vic Fangio is so good at bringing pressure from God knows where, and, you know, just amoeba sets is something that he's gone on about. And you know what? I can't argue with him. I would love that on the Chiefs. And Vic Fangio knows defense. Yeah, his head coaching tenure was not great with the Broncos, and he could never really get that offense going, which is what eventually led to his firing. But he's had a damn good defense, and he's had one of the only defenses that have consistently given Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense trouble. Fangio's secondary play has also been really good, and he's really good at, you know, picking out defensive talent. And I think he would be a Chiefs defensive coordinator that would actually play the best guys on the defense. If Dorian O'Daniel and Armani Watts return for another year, I think they're both free agents after this year. I truly think that with Fangio, those are two guys I think you would see actually start to get on the field. Because to me, that is 100% a Spags decision, and he doesn't really touch the defense. He's not telling Spags to not play those guys. He's not the one telling Spags to keep playing Sorensen and keep playing Neiman. That's a Spags thing. Fangio also knows the division pretty well, so he would fit right in Kansas City. He would be a home run hire. He really would. I think it's a pipe dream at this point, but if something happens to Spags, Vic Fangio is one to watch, but it would also have to be before Vic Fangio gets hired somewhere else as a defensive coordinator, because I think Vic Fangio will also have options too. A couple other names for defensive coordinator that I won't go as in-depth on because I don't like them as much as Fangio, and I think they're also both pretty unlikely. Mike Zimmer and Brian Flores. Brian Flores was the surprise firing from the Dolphins. I think there were reasons for that firing, but I'll admit I was surprised. But Brian Flores knows defense, and so does Mike Zimmer. Even though the Vikings defense was actually not all that great in the latter part of Zimmer's tenure, I think if he was asked to focus solely on the defense, that it would look a lot better. And I think he also might take a little bit of time off. I think he really was burnt out towards the end with the Vikings. So I don't even know if he's going to be on the market or if he will even take any jobs that are offered to him. We'll have to see. But those are a couple of names that, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a long shot, but I would like to see it. I think Brian Flores is probably going to be a head coach somewhere else, so that one's like really a pipe dream. But anyway, I've been rambling for a bit. You guys get the point. I just want to do a quick rundown on the Chiefs coordinators and possible scenarios with them as we get into the popular time for teams to conduct head coaching searches, because we could actually get a more clear picture on what's going to happen with a lot of these guys in the next couple weeks. Like, this stuff could be developing really soon, and all of a sudden we find out Bieniemy has landed a job elsewhere. Now, if he does, he's still going to finish out the season with the Chiefs. That's how it's always been. But it's pretty common that guys, land a job elsewhere as they're still in season with their current team. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit with you guys. But let me know down in the comments what your guys' thoughts are. If you agree, disagree with anything I said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And lastly, make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, where I've really been pumping out content this week. But I appreciate the support from all you guys, and I will see you in the next one.